Hey, welcome into Parts Counter Guru podcast.
Oh, hello.
So, Keith, what do we got in store today?
Man,
what are we doing today?
I can hardly contain myself. So much to talk about, so little time. I feel like I need to be paying to do this podcast. I'm so excited about so many things to talk about.
Right?
So,
I'm excited, too. I learned a lot yesterday.
this is, on a lighter note, but exciting, and as the parent of an 8, soon-to-be 9-year-old that's into Lego, the Detroit Auto Show was, I guess, just wrapped up, I think, or is about to be wrapping. It's going on, right? Or
Yeah.
okay. So big in the auto industry, big news. Well, GM opened their fan portion of their show, I guess over last weekend with a full-size Chevy Silverado Lego pickup.
I saw that, and it was incredible. I looked at the number of pieces that is like almost a little over 300,000. Isn't that right?
Yeah, are you talking about the number of pieces?
Yes.
Okay, yeah. So we went to Legoland in Florida a couple years ago, I think, and they have a driving ride where you drive Lego cars, and they had a full-size Ford Explorer, and they showed the video on how they made it, and it took them, like something like a month or two, and they call these guys master builders that put all these things together. And so I guess not to be outdone, now GM has their own version. Did you see what the thing weighs?
I did not catch the weight.
Well, if you had to guess, what would you... Okay, so knowing that an actual Chevy Silverado 1500 comes in just under, I think, 5,000 pounds, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
Point of reference there.
Yeah.
Any idea what
gross
you think?
vehicle? Gosh, Lego pieces are so light. I'm going to go with 2,500
It's
pounds?
I think it's about
3,000?
3,000. Yeah, it's
Okay,
about
yeah.
1,000 pounds less than the real deal. That's
Because
pretty
that's
heavy,
an awful
man.
lot of pieces, man.
Yeah.
of-
And then
of Lego,
apparently
so.
GM, when the Batman Lego movie came out, did this with a Batmobile, or so it's become a popular thing. But
Yeah, I read that. That's pretty neat, actually. Which, speaking of that, we're talking about the Batmobile and all this stuff. Did you finally see that Walmart commercial that I was telling you about? That has, the Ghostbusters hearse in it and the Batmobile and all these different. It's a really good commercial.
I gotta find it. You gotta send it to me, man.
I'll send you the link to it.
So you know what fascinates me about Lego, and I wasn't that into Lego as a kid. Like I had some, but I think I'm more into it now with my kid. Tell me if you've heard this one before. Okay, so they have these. Every set has a set number, model number, whatever. There's a number on the box. If you buy the Lego Batmobile, and there's probably 3 dozen different versions of that, each one will have its own. Like this particular kit, it's this number, right? And if you go there are places online where you can go put in that kit number, and it will give you a breakdown of every single piece that's in that kit, how many of them there are in the kit, what color it is, what that part number is. Does this sound familiar to you at all?
It does. That's pretty
Very similar
pretty
to the
neat.
automotive industry. So their
Yes.
cataloging is incredible. And Jay's laughing because Jay would probably be the equivalent of a like 3rd-degree black belt in the cataloging industry or something. I mean, so there's all these automotive interconnecting. You got brakes. Well, what cars does that particular set of pads work on? And and not just one manufacturer, but across all manufacturers, but only with these certain wheel sizes. It's just insane.
Yeah, so you wonder if Lego's using similar standards
It's
for cataloging
like,
purposes, because you would have to, I think, to be able to drill down on specific attributes to map the thing.
Yeah, I mean,
Interesting.
I'm looking into that cataloging aspect of the Lego for selfish purposes because we're getting so much of it now that you can go look up a kit that you don't own and go, well, I want to build this fire truck. And they will tell you, well, here's all the parts that you need. Well, if you had a catalog of all the parts you had, potentially you wouldn't need to buy the whole kit, right? You could just buy 3 or 4 parts. And yeah, so anyway, stay tuned. We may...
It's actually very smart on Lego's behalf to do that, because you draw in a different audience into that world.
Yeah.
I mean, let's face it, Keith. We all love being a kid every once in a while.
Well, that's true. And I mean, we made it through that entire segment without me saying anything about the fact that Lego Silverado brick up will probably last longer than the real thing.
Oh! Yeah. Well, I can tell you, I know it will. This is true. This is true.
No.
You're not a Ford man, are you?
We're gonna get into brand loyalty at some point, but probably not on this podcast today. But I've got family with lots of Chevy trucks, and I'm whatever. I'm not whatever.
I actually do the research on what I know works, and that's the beauty of being in the industry, is that you get to hear all of the horror stories, and you know what to steer away from. So. Well,
and you're touching on something there. So you talk to a lot of people that are in the know. You do your homework. You talk to car people.
Yep.
You see what they think. You and I have had many of those side conversations when I'm about to buy a car. Speaking of talking and cars and talking to cars, you ever talk to your car, Jay?
All the time.
Does your car ever talk to you?
It does.
I wonder how many people know that their car is capable of talking to them.
That's a good question.
You totally did not see it coming from this direction, did you?
No, I did not. So that's funny, man. That's a good way to put that, because you could actually you could go in 2 different directions with that.
Yeah.
Right?
We may end up going in several different directions.
Yeah. So I would like to welcome everybody into the acronym hell world.
Yeah, we're gonna get.
Are you ready? Are you ready for that?
I don't know. I'm gonna do my best. So we've been kind of dancing around an inside joke here that we'll let you all in on now. Jay has tested out and has been working on a video review of an OBD II code reader dongle by a company called Fixed, Fixd. This was on our website. We did a podcast episode over the holidays called Gifts for Car Enthusiasts or something along those lines, and this was one of the featured things that we said would be cool to have. Well, we actually, I have one too. Jay went out and shot a video and did a review, and this particular product, now we're going to get into the OBD stuff, I think, right?
Absolutely, we have to in order to have this discussion for sure.
So this is a really cool product. Do you want to talk a little bit about how do you want to do this? You want to talk about the OBD concept first, and then talk about the product, or you want to talk about the product first?
I think that we need to explain what OBD is, and then we'll work our way into what this product does, because you need to understand what OBD is in order to get the full advantage of these things, to know what you're working with.
Okay.
So
I guess for starters, OBD was a technology designed by a group of really awful, sinister people with nothing but bad intentions, and no, I'm joking. So I think it goes back to Volkswagen in like the late '60s, being one of the first
late '60s, early 70s, and it was it was a very, very as kind of a primitive form of diagnostics. It wasn't as easy as it is today, and obviously they had nowhere near the number of sensors to basically talk to you about. So so that's where it started. But then it you had several manufacturers, like for example, GM really got into the game in the late '70s, early '80s. I think they called it ALDL which was assembly line.
So
diagnostic. Yeah.
This is good stuff, and I've got some bad news. And for those of you that don't know this, we use I'm not going to say what we use as our web conferencing platform, but we use a tool to do this because we're in 2 different locations. I lost you there for a good 20 seconds. Like, just you were gone.
I lost you, but
so
hey.
We normally try to keep these things live, and I don't do a lot of editing on but let's go back just for a second to, we were talking about Volkswagen kind of playing around with this in the early days,
yeah.
and then you take it from there.
Right, and I had said that back then in the early days it was kind of primitive in comparison to what we have now, obviously because the technology was not there that we have today, and there were not enough emission control sensors on the vehicle yet to really, but it was there. I mean, the foundation was laid way back when. GM kind of got into it in the late 70s and early 80s, and they had an assembly line diagnostics.
I was wondering if you were going to mention that. Yeah. So
yeah. So that was pretty cool, and that. But then what happened, Keith, is California has always been the leader in regards
making
to
my life hell,
making our lives hell, and if you were a guy that were standing behind a parts counter like I was back in those days, you felt the pain of every customer walking in the door because they really just did not know how to deal with the California emissions and the OBD's standards that were trying to come about. Catalytic converter. We've spoken about the catalytic converters. We've spoken about that decade of problems that the auto industry went through. So, and all of those mistakes and hardships and things that we went through back then led us to where we're at today. So, fortunately, trial by error. We made a few mistakes and we tweaked a few things, and now we're where we're at. So, technology is so far more advanced now than it was then that it makes it a lot easier. So there's so much of this in your head that know, and that I kind of know. And I want to just break this game film down for just a second, because you touched on like so many. I mean, you could probably replay what you just did there over and over for a couple dozen times and glean something new every time. So we are in the second revision of the OBD standard. It's called OBD II. OBD stands for onboard diagnostics. Sorry, onboard diagnostics.
Yep. The initial use, so Jay was talking about this, manufacturers like Volkswagen used it for engine tuning, and then GM got involved, and they did things on the assembly line where they were using it to report certain sets of data back to them during the manufacturing process. Then, in the early 80s, I think, I'm going to be the novice on this, we start to get into use of it for emissions reporting. Okay.
The foundation was set for that.
And then there was a group of people, and this is why we mentioned California, and we were joking. We don't hate California, but that the initial regulatory movement came from California. It was a group called, the acronym is CARB. That's how I always remember it. CARB.
Right.
And they at some point instituted a regulation that all cars sold in California that were new cars had to have this, and then later on the United States adapted some of those same regulations, and that's how we came out with the OBD II platform in the United States across the board.
Right, and to know that there was never really an OBD I, they rebranded it as OBD I when OBD II came out. OBD I was the California standard.
Okay.
Then it was adopted, throughout the U.S. In the late 80s and early 90s up through 95. And then in 96 is when the federal agencies got involved and mandated that all vehicles be compliant with OBD II technology.
Okay. So what does this mean to the average consumer? Well, a couple things. So there are several uses today of this OBD platform, right? So in every car sold in the United States, new, and I'm specifically talking about cars, just before 2000, they were required to have these. Now, if it's a heavy duty truck, or that regulation didn't happen until later. We're gonna get into that in a second, but
Yep.
But the initial use was for reporting of emissions data. In other words, to make sure you could pass emissions inspection. We have now
Correct. And
go ahead. Sorry.
And can I elaborate a little bit
All
on
you want.
why? Yeah, thank you. Elaborate a little bit on why the OBD II standard became the standard. I worked in the industry in powertrain management, engine diagnostics, those sorts of things, and we would have customers come to us to basically repair their vehicle to go through emissions. And
now wait, you wouldn't be suggesting that you just reset? Oh no, I see where you're going with this. You're saying that they didn't pass, there was a light on, they took it through emissions, it failed, so they brought it to you and said, what's this light about? And you guys had to backtrace the problem. Okay, sorry.
That is correct. However, there was some fixing in the industry
you
to
hand
get
me
it to
$200,
pass.
I'll get you a passing. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Right. So, it's just like the catalytic converter where you had the replacement pipes when they first came out, which became, illegal to do. If you, and this, you've been through enough emission tests, I have as well, that the first thing they look for is to make sure that converter is still intact, as well as your gas cap being vented and working properly. And then, obviously, they do a live diagnostics when you go through the OBD II
Okay,
port.
so you were about to take us to a part where you talked about how this communications protocol can be used to diagnose errors in a vehicle and report those errors to a service technician so that they can troubleshoot.
That is correct. And repair whatever problem may exist. Now, the whole driving force behind that is the emission standard. Okay? So that is where OBD II comes into play, which is you can no longer tinker with, you have to, there are factory resets, but if there is a repair issue, it's going to be stored there in your ECM. Okay? So there's no more getting past that. You have to replace the component, repair the vehicle in order for it to pass emissions. Federal law. You cannot monkey with it anymore.
But depending on how sharp your emissions tester is and what kind of platform they're using to test and a bunch of other stuff we're not going to get into, it is possible to defeat that or bypass it. So this is important, folks. Keep in mind that what Jay said here, the initial intent of this platform was for emissions purposes. Now, we've gotten into all kinds of other uses for this stuff, which are some of them are really, really cool. And we're going to talk a little bit about that. Actually, let's. So I want to come back to the emissions testing, and you know why, but I want to talk about this product because it's. So you got to play with this before I did, and I just kind of started messing with it yesterday. But
I did. Yeah, it's so simple. It's so simple to use. It really is. It basically uses your OBD II port. And again, remember everybody, across the board, OBD II is since 2008. Everything is the same across the board. You can use the same diagnostics tool across the board on an OBD II platform.
Now, usually, and there's somebody's going to write in with an exception, and that's sure, fine. I welcome your letters. But
absolutely.
But partscounterguru.com, ask us a question. There's a link at the top. But usually from the steering wheel, if you go down the dash and you're looking above your knees, somewhere in the area that's as I lean away from the microphone. Sorry, guys.
2 feet has to be within, federal law states it has to be within 2 feet of the steering wheel.
Okay, so it's got to be. Now they're sometimes hidden. I've got a Toyota FJ Ultimate. I'm very fond of that vehicle. It's a 2014. Mine's hidden kind of up underneath, but still within that 2 feet area.
It has to be extremely accessible, but they understand that due to aesthetic reasons, some vehicles are going to be in different positions. So, but again, the key rule is it's going to be within 2 feet of the steering wheel.
All right.
Most vehicles are going to be in the are going to have it in the driver's compartment, but some can be in the passenger compartment as well.
So this product, which we'll put a link to this on the website if you're interested in checking it out. I rarely do this. This is a really cool product. The folks at Fixed or FIXD or however they say that, they're not paying us anything to talk about this product. This is just something Jay found, and I was like, well, this looks and I've played with a lot of these. This is by far the best one that I've ever seen. So you went out, you shot a video, you played around with it, you plugged it into your car, and you just tell, like, you've told me some of the what some of the cool features this thing will do.
Well, first off, it will run you can at Liberty, you can run a full scan of the engine diagnostic. You can do that, but it's so easy. You download the app, and then once you've downloaded the app, then you plug in the actual sensor that they provide you, and it goes through and connects through Bluetooth. It's powered by your OBD II port, so keep that in mind, that it is a powered unit. It has to have power all the time. So one kind of disclaimer here that I learned after the fact is that if you're not going to drive the vehicle all the time, you should probably think about pulling it out. It could be a potential drain on the battery, or for some odd reason, maybe something goes haywire and something shorts out, and that's the last thing you need.
Okay,
have to.
We're going to come back to that.
Yeah,
and that's a very important point, and that is near and dear to my heart. And I'm so glad that you framed that perfectly. But I want to. This thing is like, I don't want to jump in and start ranting about OBD shorts, but that's coming. But so you did a code scan on yours. I know that it'll tell you it like mine showed me. Well, here's the make and model of your vehicle, and
right.
There's some crazy cool, like, did you see the fighter pilot heads? You can switch it to you can use it while you're driving, and it will show you active vehicle data. And
yes, and I'm still finding things that it will do.
You can go show like fuel management, and not just RPM and speed, right? But all this other cool crap that you're
absolutely. And the other things that you and I are sticklers about is your maintenance, and scheduling maintenance. The things that it will do for you for example, you go out and you purchase a set of tires.
Yep.
Okay. Enter in the mileage. At the time, and the warranty on the tires.
It'll keep track of the rotation.
It'll keep track of it, the rotation.
I had mine do a battery test when I plugged it in yesterday. I let it test my battery, and it did a dead not. So you turn the vehicle off, let it sit for a minute, and then it'll do a voltage check. Right. So there's some cool, there's honestly quite a few things this thing will do. Now I discovered. When I did mine, and again, I've got a 2014 Toyota FJ. I went over and played around in the maintenance section a little bit, not to the extent that you did, but just to kind of see what was in there, and it's suggesting I think I've got about 38,000 miles on my FJ, and it says at 40,000 I need to change the spark plugs. Well, me being me. I just can't help myself. I pull out the service manual that Toyota provided in the glove box, and I'm like, really? That sounds really early for a Japanese car. It's 120,000 in the manual. So these are guidance suggestions.
It's not a rule of law. It's just suggestions, based on averages of product life and driving conditions. They take all those things into consideration.
Now, if you have a Chevy Silverado, 40,000 miles, you probably need to be replacing.
You probably need to be replacing the vehicle.
Sorry.
But
I'm joking. Please don't. They're fine. They're fine. I'm not.
Come on, Chevy lovers.
These things together. I'm not. I'm just.
Come on, Chevy lovers. We need you too. So, but it's good that you bring up about the spark plug. This is something that this scanner will do for you. This sensor will do for you. If you have an an SES light come on, a service engine soon. There's another acronym. A mill light. It's the same thing. Malfunction indicator light. You're going if that comes on, and stays on, then that means it's actually a 2-trip. It's been through 2 times.
Right.
You know that, right?
Right.
You got a 1-trip and a 2-trip.
I do now.
You got 1-trip code. If it's not, and what it does is it collects that data and it stores that data.
Right.
And I just recently had this happen to me, and I wished that I'd have had this product beforehand so I would have known myself without having to take it to a mechanic to scan it. But my check engine light came on, and it was on for a couple of days, and it went off. But being me, I decided to, when I could get it in as quickly as they could schedule me in, I took it in, and me being the guy that I am, I'm telling the guy what I think I know is wrong with it, and he says, well, we'll go ahead and run a scan on it anyway, and if it's nothing, then it is nothing, and
Right.
we'll clear the codes out. Which, speaking of codes, if you do get codes, don't clear codes until you fix the problem.
Right.
Because that information is very important.
So this is
Go ahead.
This is a tool. So this is one of the best tools that I have seen. If you are going to try to troubleshoot or just know how to talk to a mechanic and explain to them what you want them to look at, this is one of the best products that I have seen to assist with that. Now, I've used some of these Bluetooth OBD readers off eBay. The Torque app I've used a lot. I like that. I just feel like this. Did you notice when you open the app, it said, and I'm going to paraphrase here, but it was like, what kind of person are you? Are you a mechanic? Are you a fix-it-yourselfer? Are you and I went with the in-betweener because it'll show me everything.
Right. I did the same thing because I want to see what this thing's going to do for that person that
Right.
really doesn't have time or doesn't have any desire to work on their own vehicle. So it is a perfect gift and tool for anyone. If I'm a father that has a child that's just going off to college and they have a used vehicle and they're thousands of miles away from me, I'm going to buy one of these because if they got a check engine light that comes on and they have a smartphone, trust me, in this day and time, there's not a kid out there that doesn't have a smartphone.
Right.
So why not buy them the sensor so they can download the app? And if they call, if the check engine light comes on and they run a scan and they say, "Hey, Dad, Fix just ran a scan on it. It says I need to change the spark plugs. Can you send me out $500?"
Well, yeah, for spark plugs, something else going on there, kids. Unless you're having somebody else do it, I guess. But
no, they're buying a keg afterwards,
right,
man.
right.
Trust me,
That's what
going
I
on.
was thinking. Yeah, the keg is 40-50% of that. So I think you can use this device with more than one car, and it keeps multiple. It keeps track of because you can name the vehicles in the app. And now here's something else that you touched on, and again, man, Jay, you just assume that we all have this like wealth of knowledge that's in your head, and you talk about these things like it's like we're all supposed to be like familiar. You had said I went to my, I don't know, did you say dealer, service garage?
My technician. There are two things in life you need to get to know, and that's your technician and your doctor.
Now this guy, this guy was versed in the language of that brand. Okay, in my case, it's a Toyota. So mine threw a couple error codes. So where I'm going with this is, those are generic codes. If you go to a Toyota dealership, if you're driving a Toyota, or a Yugo dealership, if you're Jay driving a Yugo. No, I'm joking. They're going to have Mini Cooper is going to have their specific translation for those error codes, okay? Because we're going to get into this a little bit. Not every manufacturer uses the same codes the same way, nor do they use those ports in the same way, okay?
That is correct.
So my and when I say ports, I'm talking about the actual pins in the OBD socket.
Exactly, and where that was a problem in the OBD I era, it was unique to each manufacturer, Keith, as you well know. Like Ford had its own.
Oh, they still do. Yeah. So
the language was indigenous to that specific manufacturer, but the standardization allows a mechanic or a technician to use one tool across the board in the OBD II world. Unfortunately, if you're checking vehicles, prior to 96, you're going to have the specific OBD I tool for that particular manufacturer. So
when we started this podcast, I said, I was so excited I could hardly contain myself. And right now my mind's just racing, and I'm trying to, where to go next with this. But I'll tell you a couple things here. And this is opinion time. But understand that when I'm throwing these opinions out here, there's a lot of experience behind this and some knowledge of what I'm talking about that sort of puts this opinion in place. So you need to be careful when you plug anything into your car. Anything. And you need to understand that no matter how great that product is, if you don't do it the right way, you can seriously jack something up. And
absolutely.
I love all this stuff. I love technology. I have a heads-up display that plugs into an OBD port that I got a few years back. I had it laying around, and I thought, let's just plug this thing in and see what happens. And you got to know, this FJ is one of 2,500 made, limited production run. I had a FJ before it, and when I found out Toyota was doing this Ultimate Edition run, I ran out and bought it. I had to get on a waiting list and wait 6 months, and I'm not going to just go sticking stuff in the places that doesn't belong in this car, okay? So when I put that heads-up display on and turned the key, a really weird thing happened, and it was the weirdest slow start I've ever heard this thing do, and it was not good. So I unhooked it, started the thing back up, and everything was fine. Now, when I a week or two later went and plugged that fixed in yesterday and read the code, I got 2 errors back. One of them was startability malfunction. Go figure. And the other one was a code that said seat driver front up circuit open, which I went and looked at Toyota's code, kind of cross-reference, and I think it's got something to do with an airbag sensor on the passenger side or the seat or something. So but I've got no check engine lights on the dash or SS, what'd you call it? SES, yeah. But the startability malfunction, I know exactly where that came from. I was there when it happened. I know why it happened, and it's because I put something in that OBD port that was a piece of crap that caused my car to start poorly. Now, this brings us to another subject, okay? That's all sort of tied in here. So when you go look at, and I've got them on my tablet here because I was trying to be prepared for this conversation. But if you go and you look up the criteria for OBD II and the pinouts, you're going to see a term in there a lot, and that term is manufacturer discretion. And when you see that, it means that on that particular port or pin, that manufacturer can put what they want on there within limits, right? So, as an example, pin number 11, GM uses for some sort of object detection CAN bus, but Ford uses it for stuff that was pre-OBD II.
Right.
And then you get into the variable. Let's see, what do they call it? So the way of delivering data. GM has a way, Ford has a way. They're not the same. And it's tricky because the first thing that happens when you plug in one of those dongles, that dongle goes, all right, what's happening on this port? What's happening on this port? What's happening on this pin port? What's on this pin port? What's going on here? And then it gathers all that up and it goes, oh, well, I see CAN bus information on number 11. That's a trait of GM, so this might be a GM. Let's keep on looking, right? And it's trying to match up what it sees. Where that gets risky, and this is my opinion, and people are going to swear that you can't do harm by hooking stuff up into these ports and they're data only and all that. If you can jack your car up if you're not careful. And the best advice I can give you is make sure your car's running before you plug it in. And the fix manual even tells you that. It tells you the first time you use it, start it up and leave it running.
Start it up and leave it running. Absolutely, yes, absolutely. Well, that's the thing, is that there is static that can be stored up in these ports. There could be anything that could cause this thing to send a surge across the network.
Well, and as a data guy, I can tell you this is a very slow speed in terms of how fast it can transmit that data.
Mm-hmm.
If you're trying to read data from an engine, from that control computer in your engine, while it's trying to start your car and you're pulling too much bandwidth, you could cause problems. Your electronic fuel injection can get... when you start a car, the first 5 seconds, there's stuff going on that's very important, but it's trying to stabilize itself, right?
That's right.
Okay. So you've got a controlled explosion starting.
It is literally every sensor on that vehicle is taking diagnostic readings, split seconds.
And then you go and you plug something into that while that's happening. Now you're adding to the chaos. I'm fired up today, man. Well, here's why I'm fired up. So this is okay.
Tell them. Go ahead and get into it, man. This is why we're here today.
So, I own a '99 Ford F-250. It's got 60-something thousand miles on it. It's 20 years old, 60,000 original miles. It is a V10 Triton. It's the big one, gasoline engine. Pulled RVs with it. It's a great truck. It's a great truck. Okay. I live in Tennessee. Tennessee uses the OBD port for emissions testing. However,
remember in the beginning of this story, why was the OBD II and the OBD standard period set forth? And that's why, right there, the emissions testing.
This is a heavy-duty pickup. That means that it falls under a different criteria for regulatory things than a passenger car. It weighs more. It's got bigger. Everything's bigger on it. It's designed for a different use. This is not a daily driver. You don't want to be taking that V10 to the grocery store. I mean, it's just not. That's not its purpose. Okay, so Ford is not alone in this, and a lot of these manufacturers did this, knowing that the impending regulations were coming even to heavy-duty trucks. They went ahead and start putting those ports in. Okay. Well, I didn't know all this, and I didn't know the brake and what year was the cutoff, and I looked down and saw the port in there and bought the truck. Well, it was handed down to me from a family member in another state, okay? So I take it to the inspection station the first year I get it to license it, and the guy freaking plugs the thing in and turns the engine and misfires my truck. Misfires the pickup. Like, I thought the thing was going to just... It wasn't... It sounded like... I was at a NASCAR race, and they had the engine half apart, and they were trying to start it. Okay.
Right, and proper protocol on that, by the way, is to start the engine first.
So
proper protocol.
So it turns out that, and there's still a gray area here, because some trucks that Ford made that year had full OBD II compliance, meaning they already had the computer in to handle it. Some don't. I still don't know if mine does or doesn't. I think technically it doesn't, based on stickers that I'm supposed to be looking for and all that. But for the next 4 years in a row, I would show up at the emissions inspection station. The guy would start my truck, throw an error code for a misfire, and fail me. This thing was perfect before the 5 seconds before I drove it in and turned the key off. There was no issues. There had never been an issue. And then you get into this whole, some guy telling me, well, there's no possible way this thing could cause that kind of problem, and I've started thousands of these cars this week, and blah, blah, blah. And now it's him versus you, and that's just, I'm going to try to use a little restraint here, okay? But it absolutely can cause problems. I can prove to you that it will. I can show you that it has. And there is an exemption before you go there where I can kind of try to make the case with these people that my car should be exempt from that. But that takes a lot of proof and a lot of research and a lot of trying to get the right person, all that. So here's what I'm saying. Back to what we were talking about earlier. Be careful when you use these things. Know what you're plugging it into. The first time you plug something in, don't ever do it with the car off and then start the car. Start the car first, then plug it in. What would you add to that? I'm going to calm down for a minute.
My question for you on that: what type of OBD port is it? The OBD II.
It looks
style
exactly.
Port?
You can't see the difference. It's an OBD II.
Then what the difference would be the pinouts.
Yeah, if you've got somebody willing to go look at that and see and know, like that guy's not gonna.
Right.
He's just plugging in his. What the boss man told me to go hook it up.
Right. Right, and again, the new the late OBD II scanners, and especially the ones that are at these emission testing stations, these facilities have the right tools and equipment to do the right job. The problem is in my opinion, it's the user that is taking a chance every time he does that or she does that, because again, my recommendation, and I've always been taught that if you're going to test anything, start the vehicle first.
Right.
That's what I've always been taught.
Hey, how about this? Start the vehicle, use these. I'm pointing to my eyes for the audio podcast people. Look at the console, see if there's a light on. I know you can't trust that, but it's no harm in a little common sense,
exactly.
Right? So yeah. I mean, the guy and look, man, when you get that far, like they don't even want you near them when they're doing it, because I'm sure these guys come in with like Ferraris and BMW M7s and 8s and 6s, and they're like, "Don't touch my car," and and the guy's like, "Look, man, it's just my job. I got to do it, whatever." But there are documented cases of weird things happening with various manufacturers if you plug in OBD scanners and don't use them properly. And if you don't believe me, just go look online.
You can. There's plenty of forums on it. As a matter of fact, this particular device, the fixed device, which I like and recommend, I have read that there have been certain individuals who have, for example, there was one person that had a late model Ford F-250 with I think it was maybe the 6.4 liter Power Stroke or one of those.
Okay, so it's a diesel. Yeah. Okay.
It's a diesel, but he had put a chip in it.
Yeah.
And so it was tuned, but he bought this just to kind of
see what was
out
going
what was going on. And the thing started missing and stumbling out of the chute.
Yeah.
And he removed it and then shut down. Started back up, it reset itself, and then he installed it, and it worked.
Yeah.
It didn't give him any bad codes or anything, or any MILs, anything like that. There were no PIDs or anything, so he was fine. But these are just little things that, our whole point of this conversation today is not only to inform everybody of what a great technology this is, but with any technology, you have to be mindful of some of the horror stories that can go on if there's misuse going on or uneducation. If you're not educated enough to understand that you can cause harm, then you don't need to be working at an emissions testing station.
Get me started. Because my routine then became to leave it running and try to find a guy that would listen to me for 20 seconds, explain to him that the place down the road 30 minutes ago that I waited in line 45 minutes to get into through a code, but if you'll leave it running, it's fine. It's just that you can't on this truck. And then the guy, and then I'll find, I would find a guy and go, okay, yeah, look at that, it's fine. But so part of the issue is the fault of the manufacturer, so to speak. And this is kind of again, opinion, but there's not really a standard. And when I think of standard, I mean, okay, like if I go plug a USB device into my computer, there is a USB standard that says exactly what those pins have to be used for, and you do not deviate from that. When you get into OBD II, look at this. I pulled this up. Ford uses something called pulse width modulation through their pins. Yep. GM uses something called variable pulse width. So they're sending the data in different formats to the reader, and the reader has to be smart enough to look at that and figure it out on the fly and go, oh, this is coming in this way, it's a GM, right? Right,
and there are reasons behind that, and you're right, you hit a a good point there with the fact that it is standardized, but to a point.
Right.
Each manufacturer has their own proprietary, and you may need to delve into this a little bit to explain to people what it is. It was, what is 2008? Every vehicle had CAN bus.
Yeah.
Is that right? So can you explain and elaborate a little bit on?
Well, it's an acronym. Here we are in acronym hell. Basically, it's a speed protocol.
Right, it's Control Area Network. CAN stands for Control Area Network.
And if you think about it now we're gonna I'm gonna just go off the nerd into the diving board here for a minute. So
that's fine.
So if you think about network speeds, like if you want to talk Wi-Fi, you have 802.11a, 802.11b, 802.11g, 802.11n. Okay, those are speeds. You have Ethernet cables. You have Cat5. You have Cat6. You have Cat5e. You have Cat7. Well, those are all speeds that cable that looks the same when you look at it to the uneducated eye, and even to me on some of these. When you look at that, and you can't tell how fast it's rated by looking at it. Now, some of them, don't be a smart aleck people. I know it says on the cable what the speed is, but if I hid that and taped it up, you wouldn't know, okay? So
that's right. That's right.
So we're talking about speed protocols, meaning the speed that cable has been rated and tested at, and it will allow it to travel through. So when you get into the CAN bus stuff, it's a certain language that transmits at a certain speed along a certain number of pins, and each one of those pins is defined to do a certain thing, whether it's ground or power and so on, right? Does that? Mm-hmm. So the problem that you get into for me with OBD II is no different than any of those other things that I just talked about, is you have a designation for a power port, and you talked about earlier that fixed. There's a port on your OBD, I don't know what number it is, but it's there, and it's always positive power, always. Right?
Port 2.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah. Yep.
So you can pull power from that port even with the key off and out of the vehicle. Always. It's always hot, right? But what they don't tell you that I could find is what is the limit of how much power you can pull through that thing at once. So think about it like this. Think about it, you know these electric space heaters that you can get in the wintertime, put in your house or plug into the wall, right? Okay. Yep. What happens if you plug one of those into a wall outlet that has a very low circuit breaker fuse rating that's really not designed to carry a heavy load? You're gonna blow a fuse or a breaker, right?
You're gonna blow a fuse because it can't handle the load.
So what happens if I go plug something into my OBD port that's pulling power, and it's pulling more power, or it's trying to pull data faster than that signal line is rated for?
And guess what? It's not.
You're gonna get a misfire, and then the guy's gonna stand there and tell you that
right.
he's been starting cars for thousands. Yeah. I kind of led us right down that road, didn't I? So
you did.
But that's another reason why you don't plug them in until after you start it, because you're going to pull too much of a load. Let it stabilize first, and everything's not as busy.
And to prove that you have power at the port at all times, when you plug the fixed sensor in, the dongle into the port, a Bluetooth light illuminates.
I saw that. At first, I was like, wait, what's that flashing? Oh, right. It's pulling power. Got to have power.
Yep.
Got to have power to work.
It has to have power, and for someone to tell you that there's not any power at that port, they don't know what they're talking about.
Yep.
Because it is.
Yeah, and
it's there for a reason.
And I actually did a little bit of research for the podcast today because I knew what we were going to talk about, and I was super excited. If you can't tell, it's not obvious, right?
Right.
And you get a lot of mechanics going in forums, talking to people who go on the forums and go, I've got a problem. I'm getting this OBD code. Is there any? And I specifically looked for misfire issues because I wanted to see, fodder for the conversation. And you get a lot of people saying, no, I can't do that. But then you do get some people that basically come back and say what I said, which is like, well, theoretically it's possible under the right circumstances if you have a bad product or you plug it in wrong or get in there and jiggle it in and you're trying to force it in the wrong way and it's shorting out pins, right? So
this is where it becomes a problem. That's where it becomes a problem.
Oh man, I feel like this has strangely been therapeutic for me.
I know it has been. We've been talking about this for a while.
Yeah.
You and we had our first initial conversation about your incident, is what I like to call it.
You were trying to help me figure out. We were doing some research on it. I was not yet to the stage where I realized that my vehicle wasn't even potentially incapable of delivering the data they were asking for.
Right. So, and that's a whole other subject. And you know, you're right, because your gross vehicle weight kind of exempted your vehicle during those times. So you have to be very careful and understand. You know, it goes back to didn't you trace the VIN? And even with the VIN, you had a little difficulty trying to find.
Yeah, I used the VIN, and they said you got to go to the manufacturer. And I went to Ford, and Ford was like, look for a sticker. And then it was like, somebody at some point in the Ford channel knew and said, if it was technically ready to be used, meaning it had all the working parts in it that would comply with sending the data requested, there would be a sticker under the hood over whatever, and it would say a certain thing, and you need to look for that. And he showed me a picture of it on that vehicle, on that model year with that engine. But that took months and months and months of just asking questions.
Yeah, because I mean, you and I had discussed it. I think I had referred you to a few other people that are in the know that couldn't answer your questions. So sometimes you have to dig deep, and again, folks, you know, that's what we are here for. If you have questions, you can email us. You can contact us. You can go on our page on our website at www.partscountergurus.com, and we have a tab there where you can ask a question, and we'll be glad to see if we can answer.
So we're already running long on this podcast. What's a couple more minutes, right?
Exactly.
I want to say I want to hear your OBD stories. I don't care if they're good or bad. I kind of want to, you know, give us a hash. Well, I have to throw out a hashtag that would fit, but like send us a Facebook. Find us on Facebook. It's facebook.com/partscountergurus with an S. Hit us up on our website. Ask us a question is the link to connect. We've got a Instagram page at the Parts Counter Gurus. But I want to know. Let's just consider this more therapy for Keith. I want to hear your OBD stories, right? And I also feel like, as I've been editing some of these videos that we're doing, it has occurred to me that we've never really talked about why there is partscounterguru.com and partscountergurus with an S, and why we've got some over here that are one way. Well, it kind of comes down to this. We couldn't make up our mind, so we registered both, one with an S and one without. And it depends on who set it up and what day it was and what kind of mood they were in. And so, you know, we've got them both. I know on Facebook it's with an S. On Instagram it's with an S. On our website, either works, partscounterguru.com or partscountergurus.com. We got them both.
We've got you covered if you're looking.
Yeah,
put it that way.
I mean, so
if you're just pecking around on the keyboard, man, and you're looking for us, you should be able to find us.
And I'll usually throw in this video, will probably be no different if you're watching the video podcast, which we have a YouTube channel which carries our video podcast, and iTunes also carries our video podcast. I will usually throw some entertaining links up there while one of us is talking, and then we're on Stitcher, we're on Google
for
Play.
Audio for you guys. Yeah, for you guys in the morning driving into work and on your commute. You just you can't really watch the video. You want to listen to the audio. There you go, Keith. Tell them what are we on Stitcher?
So Stitcher,
Spotify,
Google Play. Google is changing their podcast platform. I feel like Google's changing their mind every 5 minutes about something. So
yes.
It's and I'm an Android user, and I've used iPhones, and my current phone is an Android, but if you're trying to submit, if you're a podcast creator, it's a little frustrating to deal with Google right now. So they have Google Podcasts, which is I think their current version of where they're trying to steer everybody. And then the older version, but not yet obsolete, is Google Play, which was their version of the iTunes Store, which you can find us on both of those.
Which both work great.
But they work, yeah,
I think.
We're there. I think that's it, but you know what? Here's the easy way to solve this. go to our website, partscounterguru.com. I chose the one without an S because it was shorter.
Right.
And click on the podcast link button. There's a link to podcast. It's got everything, and it's got, if you can just, whatever you're in, if you're using iTunes, it's got a link for iTunes. If you're using Google, it's got that. If you're using Spotify, it's got that, whatever, right? So go ahead.
And if you've gotten that far, we want you to subscribe to the YouTube channel.
Please. Yeah.
It would be very beneficial. It helps us bring you more of this information. And we can keep after it, and it'll help us in the long run, which in turn will help you guys. The other thing too, Keith, we're inviting people in to ask us questions, and we do want to know about your stories with your OBD issues if you've had any, or if you know of anyone that has. Send us an email, and what we're going to do is enter you into a drawing, and we'll have some neat stuff to kind of give away. So. It won't be a large pool to draw from, so we're what do we say? What is the number?
I think it was every 200 people.
Every 200
we
people,
reach into the bag and pull something out. Was that that was the
So even if you don't, if you have a question, great. If you don't, just drive by and tell us what you think. That'll also get you on the list.
All you have to do is subscribe or drop us a note. Right?
That's it.
And so the absolute best thing you can do for us right now to help this continue is to tell a friend, help us grow the subscription. If you've got a product that you want us to talk about that's related to what we do here, which tends to be automotive, although next week I may be trying to convince Jay to talk about lawns because I think I just fired my lawn guy today. So,
yeah.
But I digress. Drop us a note. There's a want to be a sponsor link, and we'll take a look at your product and maybe talk about it on the air if it's not offensive or whatever. What else, man?
We can put it over on the other channel.
Right.
That's all that I have on this subject for right now. I mean, we could talk all day.
Could we?
And,
I could.
And I do actually think, Keith, that and I'll commit to it, that we should maybe dive in a little deeper into the OBD II world, and not just specifically some of the issues that we had, or this great little piece that you can buy through our website.
Well, yeah, we'll put a link to that on our website. Now, we don't make that device. It's not our product. We just found it and loved it. We bought it.
Right.
They didn't send it to us. But if you use the link on our website, I think if you buy it through Amazon, we get a little chunk of something.
Little love.
Yeah.
Little love. I think they sent us a t-shirt or something, right? Or
yeah.
Yeah, something like that. So now, why don't you take us out, Keith? It's been a good one.
Wait, right. So thanks. Until next time, everybody. Thanks for listening to my rant. That is Jay over there. I am angry. And remember to keep your dongle out of my port. What'd you think?
Awesome. I thought it was great. Are you still recording?
Mm-hmm.
So am I.
Until I hit stop.
What the hell is that maneuver?